الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
नहमदुहु व नुसल्ली अला रसूलिल करीम अम्मा बाद फ़अऊज़ु बिल्लाहि मिनश शैतानिर रजीम बिस्मिल्लाहिर रहमानिर रहीम अस्सलामु अलैकुम व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहू. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, we live in interesting times. The Muslim community is challenged in many ways, both in terms of the environment or positioning that we are in society. And this would not just be true of our society and in this geography, but it would be true internationally. We see that our brethren are challenged with difficulties that they face from difficult and corrupt governments, from poverty, okay, difficulty, poverty, and struggles that they have. And in so many ways, we have to be very thankful and gracious for all the blessings that we enjoy in the society that we live in. We don't have to worry about where the next meal is going to come from, where the next missile is going to come from, where the next safety or security incident is going to happen, and whether our children are going to live to be another day, right? Unless it was from natural causes. So in this time, I think we should be immensely grateful for what we have and also all of the parameters in which we can be thankful. Today's khutbah, you know, what role do we play? What model do we follow? And what training program do we enlist us to be ready for the current situation and also for the future? What do we anchor ourselves in as Muslims, and what system of belief do we subscribe to? Obviously, we're all Muslims either by birth or by choice. And what fundamental principles of our faith should we anchor into to sail through the difficulty and to the next phase of life, to a successful next phase of life? I'm going to focus on this in this khutbah on the quality of sabr. When I came here a couple of khutbahs ago, my khutbahs, I actually spoke about gratitude. I talked about shukr. Shukr actually comes before sabr. Gratitude comes before patience. Inevitably, all of us are programmed to think that sabr or patience means some kind of stoic response in a series of calamities or disappointments or difficulty. That's how, in our culture, not in our faith, in our culture, we've translated sabr to mean is our behavior in terms of a trial, musibah, fitna, or a calamity. Correct? That's how we, right? This is how we're programmed to think that when you are facing with a difficulty, a calamity, a personal difficulty, a trial, a tribulation, something you're challenged with, being stoic, non-responsive, not showing emotion is basically what's sabr, right? I'm going to define what I think is sabr in different parameters. And to me, that is sabr, but that is the lowest form of sabr. So how do we define sabr? So first of all, sabr is mentioned in the Quran more than 100 times. And there are 12 times in the Quran where the sabirun, the sabir of the sabirun, the most patient of the patient, the holy prophet is being asked to do sabr. So think about it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is instructing the holy prophet 12 times in the Quran to get help from sabr, right? So what is it about this feature? There are many instructions that are not given to the prophet in the Quran. But 12 times he's instructed to be patient. Because is this because he was an impatient person? We know that he wasn't impatient. Is this because he couldn't restrain himself or he couldn't wait? No. But the situation was so bad that even the quality of a prophet was challenged to its core, was shaken. The character of a prophet was shaken to its core. And so 12 times in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is basically asking the Holy Prophet to have sabr. So what is sabr? Sabr is defined in a few ways: being patient, having the ability to wait, also staying steadfast, which means not shaking, not wavering, and also to show restraint. We call this sabr. Ibn Qayyim, who was a scholar of the 13th century and has written many enlightening passages, he said that sabr is not just waiting, it's when you don't allow your soul to grumble, when you don't allow your tongue to complain, and when you don't allow your limbs to do things that are in disobedience to Allah because of a difficulty you are facing. By far, I think the best definition of sabr was given by Hazrat Ali radiallah. Hazrat Ali radiallah says, patience is not waiting. Patience is the ability to withstand with a great attitude. Okay? All right. So let's get to the first parameter of sabr, which is sabr in difficulty, tribulation, trial, or disaster. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, we know this ayah very well, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ الَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ قَالُوا إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. Right? We're going to trial you. We're going to test you. بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ, with fear, وَالْجُوعِ, and with hunger, وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ, and with loss of your wealth and money. Right? وَالْأَنفُسِ, and with the loss of your souls, your lives. وَالثَّمَرَاتِ, and the loss of your crops, your fruit. وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ, and the good news. So in the most difficult time that the person is going through the calamity, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, cheer up. You need to have good news. Bashar also comes, the derivative is the word for smile also comes from Bashar. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, rejoice, because you are in a state of calamity. You are actually in a state of happiness, which is going to happen very soon. Okay? So should be, so this is the first and the lowest form of sabr. What should our behavior be in trial and tribulation? Anas bin Malik reports a hadith which is in several books of hadith, Bukhari, Muslim, Ahmad, Tirmizi, and Nasa'i. He says that the Holy Prophet was passing by. He sees a woman weeping at the grave, crying and wailing loudly. He says to her, stop weeping. And she said, get away. You don't know what the calamity I've been through. So he asks her again to stop weeping and wailing and making this loud mourning sound. And she says again that you don't know the calamity that I've been through. Get away. That's what she says, get away. So he gets on his way, and somebody comes to her and says, the person that you just scoffed at, the person you scorned at, the person you shunned away is actually the prophet of our community. So after she's done, she goes to his house. She's surprised to find that this big leader doesn't have a guard on his door. That's in the hadith. She allows permission. She goes in and she says that I didn't know you were a prophet. And the Holy Prophet says that the sabr is only at the first response. So remember, when you get bad news, when you are struggling, when you have difficulty, when the spouse calls and says, my car was in an accident, when somebody calls and says that I just got a write-up from my boss, or I got suspended, or the insurance company won't pay for the test, or your salary is going to be reduced, or you have to take off a day because we are letting people go, or there's not enough work. The first response is what is sabr. If you curse the boss, the doctor, the surgeon, the hospital, the mechanic, the other person, and everybody in the world, your children and your wife, and then you say, okay, I'm going to do sabr, that is not sabr. The first response from the news of calamity is the test of sabr. There is no sabr after that. Got it? After that is your acceptance of what has happened. The other thing I want to tease out is having no choice in a situation is not sabr. Having the choice of being ability to take action and curse and do all of that, and restraining yourself, staying steadfast and accepting the will of Allah is what sabr is. Sabr does not mean you don't take action. If your camel's running away, if somebody's taking out the catalytic converter in your car, sabr is not that you say this is God's will. Sabr is not that you don't get medical help if you're sick. Sabr is not that you don't take action against something that is happening to you where you can intervene and do things better. Sabr is the dignified behavior of a believer who knows how to grieve, who knows how to mourn, but does it in an Islamic way. So think about the story of Musa alayhi salam. Musa alayhi salam is fighting the Pharaoh, and they find a way to escape, and they part the Red Sea and they get through. And on the other side, after a series of fitnas, they get into this desert. So now the Pharaoh is not coming with the army to crush them. Now they're going to, out of the frying pan and into the fire, they're going to suffer a slow, painful death because there is no food and no water in the desert. Musa alayhi salam doesn't ask his companions to do sabr. He says, I want you to be thankful. Because he knows that if they are thankful for everything that they have, that they escaped from Bani Israel, they have their mind together, they have their health together, they're in relative safety, in open air, breathing good air with 4 limbs and 2 eyes and a nose, that they have to be thankful for everything they have to have the strength to be sabir for the difficulty that they have. Shukr comes before sabr. For the people who don't have shukr and gratitude in their life, they will never find sabr. So the first element we need to have is gratitude. When Yaqub, so sabr is not the inability to mourn. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does say, the Holy Prophet didn't instruct us that when you have grief, you can't mourn. When you have grief, you can mourn. But you have to mourn and sow sorrow in a way that is dignified. When the brothers of Joseph, Yusuf alayhi salam, came to the father, and the Quran says, وَجَاءُوا عَلَىٰ قَمِيصِهِ بِدَمٍ كَذِبٍ. When they came to him with the shirt with the false blood, he said, قَالَ بَلْ سَوَّلْتُ لَكُمْ أَنفُسَكُمْ أَمْرًا. You have conjured something up from your own souls. And you know what he said after that? فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ. That I am going to practice a beautiful patience. I'm going to practice a sabrun jameel. And then he continued to weep and cry so much that he lost his eyesight. But he didn't lose sight. He lost his vision, but he didn't lose sight of the fact that his son might be still alive. And so when he would mention it, the children would come and taunt him. His children would come and taunt him that, why do you still talk about Joseph? He died. And he would say, Innama ashku basi wa huzni ilallah. So I'm going to be tormented, I'm going to grieve, I'm going to cry, but I'm only going to cry to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm not going to make a scene out of myself in public. I'm going to carry my affairs. So when Ibrahim alayhi salam, when Ibrahim radiallahu, the Holy Prophet's son died, the Prophet had tears in his eyes. He was weeping. It's a natural response of a father. Okay? When his wife and his uncle died in the same year, it was called the year of sorrow, Amul Huzn. The companions say that the Holy Prophet did not smile for a full year. So we are allowed to grieve, but the process of grieving is different. So let's close. Hazrat Ayyub alayhi salam, right? Job, Rabbuhu anni massani yadru wa anta arhamur rahimin. He says, mas means to touch. That adversity has touched me. But you are the most merciful of the merciful. You are the I am getting this calamity on my body from your mercy, and your mercy will get me out of this. That's what he's saying. All right. But before we close adversity, I want to talk about one dimension of sabr that is the opposite of adversity. One of the most difficult places to have sabr on is in a state when you don't have ever adversity, when you are in great health, when you are affluent, right? When the person you like is smiling at you, when you have money in your pocket, when you have a flashy car, and when you have that nice job. That is one of the most difficult parameters to show patience on. It's easy to be patient when you're dealt a hand you can't control. But one of the most difficult times to be patient on is the time when you have everything and everything is at your disposal. So think about the restraint that is required with good character when you need it the most. And I want you to know that the people who need the most sabr from you, the most love from you, the most attention from you are going to challenge you the most against it. You will be tempted to be angry at the people who require the most of your attention. So beware of that, that when people come and challenge you and taunt you and tease you and you have an instinct to get upset at them, remember that is the person who needs you the most. So we should never be the people to shun people out of our lives because they are challenging us. It's a trial of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and an opportunity to change their lives and yours. So the second parameter of patience is avoiding sin and guarding against haram. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَجَعَلْنَا الشَّيْطَانَ أَوْلِيَاءَ لِلَّذِينَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. If you don't believe, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make the shaitan a guardian over you. Okay? So think about it. You live with a job, you go to work every day, right? And there is so much temptation. And social media puts us on a slippery slope of temptation after temptation after temptation. Facebook will send you a video, and as soon as you watch it, they will send you one video that is worse than it. And as soon as you watch it, they will have a line, it'll be on the top of your index to say that's our favorites. The world has shrunk into the palm of our hand in our cell phone. And the temptation is real, and social media is going to make it ever so powerful. When Shaitan was given the free will to guide humanity astray, he didn't just say, I'm going to do this once. Guess which is the most patient entity in God's creation? It's Shaitan. Shaitan came to Adam alayhi salam for 30 years, telling him that your Lord has told you not to eat from that tree. That is the best tree. Your Lord, this is in the Quran. The Quranic words say that if you eat the fruit of that tree, you will either become an angel or a jinn. They are preventing you from to eat from the tree because you're going to be a superior entity. You're going to have superpowers. Adam didn't realize that he already had the superior power. So if it wasn't for Adam, all of us would never have to work. We'd just be enjoying time in heaven today on a lighter note. But this was the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For 30 years, the shaitan came to Adam alayhi salam, and Adam didn't fall for it easily. You know, we have a difference in the Christian and the Muslim tradition. In the Muslim tradition, he was coming to both Adam and Hawa. In the Christian tradition, he was coming to Hawa, and Hawa then incited Adam, right? And in our tradition also that he got his prophethood after he said, Rabbana zalamna anfusana wa illam taghfir lana wa tarhamna lanakunanna minal khasirin. He was not a prophet before. But because of his asking for forgiveness, he was awarded prophethood and sent down. But what I want to say is, avoiding haram is a very high superior quality of sabr because it's everywhere. It's easy to pick up that stapler or the crayon or the marker or the Sharpie from the office and bring it home because you need it. It's easy to bring the pen from work because it's there. It's easy to take that thing because nobody will notice, right? But there is an accounting for it somewhere. And there's two laws that are going to make you accountable. The law of nature, which is in this world, and the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is going to be on the day of judgment. So restraining from haram is one of the highest gradations of sabr, and not the highest, but the second And it is very difficult in a day and age of social media. And what happens when you don't offer that restraint? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes the shaitan your guardian. Right? The ayah that I just read, Inna ja'alna shaitanu awliya'a lillazina la yu'minun. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Araf, the children of Adam, don't let the shaitan seduce you and lead you astray like he did to your forefathers and have you exit from the garden and declothe you so that you become naked. Why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say this? Because it happens. What does the word Iblis mean? Iblis comes from the word balasa, which means to be disappointed. So Iblis was disappointed. So he said, I'm going to make all of you disappointed on the day of judgment. What does the word shayat mean? Shaitan. Shayat means to be far away from the mercy or to have excess of anger and rage. So shaitan comes to you and says, you don't need to be sabr. You need to talk bad about your boss to your coworker. What happens? You feel good for a minute. But what happens at the time of your evaluation on the day of judgment? Right? So don't sabr and restrain has many dimensions, but staying away from haram and sin is a big virtue of sabr. We only equate sabr in the quality of something happened to us and now we need to be stoic and quiet and not grieve about it. But sabr is restraining from haram. This is the second dimension of sabr. Whoever intends a sin but does not do it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala but writes a good deed in his account for the sin that was not committed. So I know all of you are thinking, let's intend all the sins and then maybe not do them. Don't intend them, but if you decided and you were even walking in that direction and you got close to it and you didn't do it, there is a reward for that as well. Okay, because you control your nafs. And this is a higher level of sabr because you controlled the circumstances that would allow you to get into haram. And you didn't do it. You didn't take the action. The third type of sabr is how we deal with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, I know all of you brothers and sisters, you are praying 5 times a day. Ramadan is coming, everybody will fast. Everybody is paying their zakah. Everybody is getting sadaqah. Everybody is doing good deeds. Okay, but think about salah for a minute. We do it 5 times a day. Doesn't it become just a stretch, a monotonous exercise, a checkbox to say, oh, I did my zohar, it's done? It's very easy to become just a stretch and not have the consciousness and awareness and the reflection and the concentration that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is standing in front of us, or we are standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How many times do I pray where my thought is wandering? Every time, my brothers, every time. I'm just talking about myself and not about anybody else. After the Isha prayer, a man came to the Imam and he said, you only did 3 rakah. And the Imam said, no, I did 4 rakah. He said, no, I have 4 shops. I do the accounting of one shop in every rakah. And I only got to 3 shops. And you didn't do 4 rakah because I counted only 3 shops. So this is all of us. This is not that man. This is all of us. So how do we develop a relationship with Allah that is conscious, aware, intentional, thoughtful, introspective to get us into a state of self-reflection? Because that is the goal. The relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, restrained from distractions, from nervousness, from straying away in our ibadah, in our worship, in our supplication, in our zikr, in our prayer, in our fasting. How many times do we fast and we quickly look at something that we shouldn't look at? And we say, okay, I'm sorry I did that. How many times are we playing on WhatsApp or YouTube in Ramadan? Or all the time? How many times do we get angry? How many times do we get tempted? So think about your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and how you are using your sabr as a dimension to improve that, to make it a conscious, aware, and reflective moment with self-awareness. So I want to talk about the fourth dimension of sabr. Well, before I do that, let me give you a hadith. When the servant says, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, this is a hadith of Qutbi, my servant has praised me. When he says, Malik Yawmiddin, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, my servant has glorified me. When you say, Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, my servant has submitted to me. And when he says, Malik Yawmiddin, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, My servant is asking me for my help, so I'm going to give it to him. So we go to the fourth form of sabr, which is the restraint that we exercise when we're dealing with people. When we are dealing with people, we hold people in 5 types of gradations. Appreciation, I really like him. I love him. In fact, I want to be like him. I celebrate when I see him. I give him a hug. I shake his hand and I enjoy his company. Acceptance. You don't go that far, but you accept the person and you want to be their friend. Tolerance. You don't like them, but you put up with them. You try to keep a little distance, but they're okay. Right? Avoidance. Appreciation, acceptance, tolerance. Avoidance means you don't want to see the person. You don't want to see them in your company. You don't want to see them in your work. You don't want to see them in your social life. And you don't think they belong. You think they're not in with you. They don't belong where you belong because they're not good enough. And repulsion is how sometimes you all might have felt you get treated, which is the lowest form where somebody shuns you, hates you, dislikes you, and shows that. How many times you sit in an airport or a train station or a bus station and we do people watching? And as people are walking by, you see a mother with 2 little children with their little, Hello Kitty bag. And you say, oh, mother of 2, probably a housewife. How many times you see somebody pull out their laptop and you say, oh, geek squad, IT guy. How many times somebody walks in with a flashy suit and you say, oh, he's probably a salesperson going to a conference. My dear brothers and sisters, we form judgments about people in less than a second, just as they flash in front of us. We are highly judgmental people. We are designed to be judgmental. But whose job is judgment? It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's job. Just judgmentalism is what has caused Islam to split up into ethnicities, into sectarians, into Hanafis and Hanbalis and Shafi'is. It's okay to be that way. It's what excludes people from the masjid because you are not in. So how do we create an environment of restraint where everybody is included always? Everybody is always in and nobody is excluded. Our dealings with people and our restraint to things we don't like is the highest form of sabr because it's going to challenge us the most. In one of our masajid that I go to other masajid and I deliver khutbahs, there was a group of people that were shut out. And the next thing you know, all the people, not just from that group, from that ethnicity, left the masjid. I gave a khutbah in the Westchester Masjid 2 months ago on the 5 marginalized communities within the masjid. 5 marginalized and oppressed communities within the masjid. A big masjid is built. It's 20,000 square feet. And Pakistani and Indian brothers contributed 95% of the money. And now there's 3 Moroccan brothers, 2 black brothers, 2 white brothers, 2 new converts coming into the masjid. They become a minority. People talk in their language. People eat their food. They chat with each other, and that person is left on family nights. Marginalization. People come. Rarely, it's such an opportunity for you to bring in the support of Islam. People come to a Sunni masjid because a Shia masjid is not accessible to them. What do? We create them, we declare them kafir, we exclude them, we don't include them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you an incredible opportunity to pull somebody in, and all you did was shun them and throw them away. This restraint is the highest form of sabr. Where I am the principal of a Sunday school, a family comes in Pennsylvania, the school is an hour away, from an hour away. 2 families come, 3 families come from Delaware. I said, why? There's 3 masajid on the way. He said, we get shunned out because of this, and this. We have to really do some introspection on ourselves. If this community is here, are we excluding anybody? Are we not welcoming anybody? After the salah, are we only hanging out with our own people, talking in our own language or lingo or whatever we do, whatever is cool to us? So I gave a khutbah on 5 marginalized communities within the 4 walls of the masjid. And that was one of them. The imam of a masjid is one of the most marginalized people in the world. They get paid very low. Nobody invites them. People invite them to janazah and ameen, and when the child is aqiqah, they don't invite them to dinner. I know 50 imams because I'm in a group with them, young imams. who have to hustle and get money for janazas and nikahs and amins because the masjid doesn't pay them. And all the people sitting on the board, they're making $500,000 because they're all my friends. I know them. So the dealings with people and the rights of people, that is when your character was going to show. And that is the highest form of restraint or sabr. We take pause and then we will continue our football. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا من سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الذين آمنوا قولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. I'm going to tell you a story about restraint. Restraint in power, restraint from sin, and restraint from dealings with human beings. This hadith is in the Bukhari. It's a long hadith, but I'm going to condense it. So 3 men were traveling on a stormy night before the times of Islam, and the weather got bad. It got really bad. So they had to take refuge in a cave, and a big rock from the mountain rolled over in the storm and covered the mouth of the cave. And now they couldn't escape. And they said this is going to be a tormentous death with hunger and thirst. So after a lot of thought, the wisest person, they said, that was there, he said, let's all recall a deed that we did only for the sake of God and nobody else. And if we tell God that good deed and remind him, maybe he will find a way out for us if we were sincere in what we did. So the first one said that I love my parents dearly over my own children. I had nothing but a flock of sheep. Every night I'd milk the sheep, come back after grazing the sheep, and I would feed my parents the milk from the sheep before I fed myself and my children. And one night when I came home, my parents were asleep. I didn't feed myself. I didn't feed my children. I didn't wake up my parents. I didn't want to disturb their sleep, but I stand with the bowl of milk on their bedside all night long. That was my patience. And as soon as he told this, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if I did this sincerely, help us. And the rock moved by a third, but not enough for a person to escape. The second person said that, like I haven't done anything good, but there's one thing that I did one time, that I was a rice farmer, and then a laborer came to work for me, and I gave him 3 sa'a of rice, about this much. But he never took his earnings, he left. So I planted that rice back in the ground, and then I became suddenly very wealthy because that rice became a field, and I bought cows and goats and camels, and I became a wealthy man. And one day that person came back and says, give me my 3 sa', okay? My this much rice, about this much, like 2 kilos, 4.5 pounds. And he said, no, all of this is yours. The flock is yours. The house is yours. The farm is yours. Because from that wealth that I planted is where all this money came from. And the person took it and walked away. And the person became his original poor self. The third person, this is an incredibly good story. He said, I was in love with my paternal cousin, my father's brother's daughter, but she wouldn't give me any attention or mind. And she was beautiful and gorgeous. And one day she was so destitute for money that she begged me, and she said she would give her body to me for 100 dinar, and I had all the money. So I went with the 100 dinar, and as she accepted me and I went close to her body, she said that think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the haram that you're about to do. And I stopped and I gave her the 100 dinar and I walked. And then the rock completely slipped away and they were able to escape. So my dear brothers and sisters, what I'm trying to say is that what we think of sabr is the stoic response of not grieving in a state of calamity is not sabr. That is the lowest form of sabr. Think of sabr when you have affluence. Think of sabr when you are tried with haram. Think of sabr in your relationship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And lastly, think of sabr when people challenge you, humiliate you, and make you angry. اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت وبارك لنا فيما أعطيت وقنا واصرف عنا شر ما قضيت فإنك تقضي بالحق ولا يقضى عليك إنه لا يذل من واليت ولا يعز من عاديت تبارك ربنا وتعاليت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك اللهم اغفر لنا وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات اللهم ألف بين قلوبهم وأصلح ذات بينهم وانصرنا على عدوك وعدوهم الله يا ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين ربي اجعلني مقيم الصلاة من ذريتي ربنا ولا وتقبل دعاء ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين آمين أقم الصلاة